Deleuze as a student of Spinoza. The value presented in the work of Baruch Spinoza stands as a testament to itself. Yet given the sheer extent of the vexed debates in the fields of sociology and philosophy revolving around politicized binaries, such as the man, woman, Occident, Orient, reason, sensation, and perhaps the oldest yet, mind and body. The metaphysics presented in Spinoza's ethics may today be of value in terms of the opportunity it develops for the possibility of the continuance of a dialogue or colloquium, which is perhaps stunted today within and by the vocabularies and discursive practices of disciplinary or political positions. The stunting or the incapacitation of a dialogue, the absence of reciprocation in communication, is a question which is of fundamental pedagogical relevance, particularly within the classroom, a space which offers the opportunity of a constructive and critical conversation, one not easily afforded in a world and an economy with increasing constraints and regulations on time and spaces. Yet even the initiation of such a dialogue, if it is to become that, requires not merely the time and place, but a certain minimum effort, a will to construct one, an effort which is not merely directed at whoever may be addressed, but is constitutive of the form which this dialogue could take. This brief monograph will try and shed some light on how such an effort is envisioned in the metaphysics and philosophy of Spinoza. Spinoza was expelled from the Jewish community at the age of 23 on account of his controversial views on the nature of the divine and the Hebrew Bible. His books were placed under the index of the Catholic Church's list of forbidden books. Spinoza lived the rest of his life grinding and polishing optical lenses. The grounds of his expulsion shall not be delved into here in detail, as it is not the purpose of this monograph. Suffice to say that the prime accusations against him were charges of materialism, immoralism, and atheism. Such accusations today may not carry the weight they once did, and there has certainly been extended developments in the way in which societal disciplinary measures are implemented, as documented in works such as Discipline and Punish by Foucault. Of concern to us presently is Spinoza's own renunciation, a denunciation which forms a keystone in his philosophical edifice, a denunciation of consciousness, values, and sad passions. Spinoza, Practical Philosophy, by Gilles Deleuze. It is possible to now already see principally the nature of the antagonism produced between him and the Jewish community. The image of an Abrahamic God, with its emphasis on the notion of a transcendent creator and its augmentation of the suffering in life into a parabolistic aphorism for the struggle and sacrifice of Abraham, are moved away from. Most crucially, in Spinoza's equation of God with nature, which is why he was called a pantheist, the belief that the universe or nature is identical with divinity. This constitutes a brief sketch of the conditions of Spinoza's movement away from Jewish communal life and some of its core theological beliefs as they existed in the Dutch Jewish synagogues of the 17th century. We shall now touch briefly upon the constructivist hypothesis and potential present in his work, which is also what may be of most immediate pedagogical relevance to us today. Spinoza's denunciation of the sad passions and traditional values opened the space for another kind of pedagogical practice, but one which does not begin with the assumption of a moral, traditional, or a belief which is to be passed on to eager ears. Such would constitute today merely another form of monologue, a declarative speaking from a summit. The emergence of a dialogue begins with the creation of the possibility of a response, where one is attentive to what it seeks or expects of who she or he may be addressing. The posing of a question may open an invitation to a dialogue, yet a response arrives only within the conditions in which it is welcome. A theme may emerge from the product of difference, present which counterpose questions or offer their take on the dialogue transpiring. To repeat this, a theme may emerge from the product of difference present which counterpose questions or offer their take on the dialogue transpiring. What is crucial to emphasize here is that these are not merely words being spoken or written, but is constitutive of the people who express them. If it were taken to be merely words, then one would regress back to precisely the kind of dualisms he leaves behind. Which brings us to an important provocation offered by Spinoza, a restatement of the very grounds of rationalism. Spinoza asks not what the mind or consciousness can do, but what can a body do? The body is presented as the new model. The thesis on parallelism presented in his work explicates and builds upon such a constructivist hypothesis. The thesis proposed not merely that there exists no real causality between the body and the mind, but it disallows any primacy of one over the other. Let me repeat this. The thesis proposes not merely that there exists no real causality between the body and the mind, but it disallows any primacy of one over the other. If Spinoza rejects any superiority of the mind over the body, this is not in order to establish a superiority of the body over the mind, which would be no more intelligible than the converse. The practical significance of parallelism is manifested in the reversal of the traditional principle on which morality was founded, as an enterprise of domination of the passions by consciousness. Deleuze, Ibid. This liberation of the passions from consciousness is what lies at the heart of Spinoza's ethics. An appreciation of the value of the affectations and actions of the body, of what the body can do. An understanding that what is an action in the mind is necessarily an action in the body, and what is a passion in the body is necessarily a passion in the mind. In the invitation of taking the body as a model, what is shown is that the body surpasses the knowledge that we have of it, and likewise thought surpasses the consciousness that we have of it. Ibid. To continue briefly along this philosophical excursion, this would imply that there are no fewer things in the mind that exceed our consciousness than there are things in the body that exceed our knowledge. Deleuze put it aptly, quote, "So it is by one and the same movement that we shall manage, if possible, to capture the body to capture the power of the body beyond the given conditions of our knowledge, and to capture the power of the mind beyond the given conditions of our consciousness. Let me repeat this. So it is by one and the same movement that we shall manage, if possible, to capture the power of the body beyond the given conditions of our knowledge, and to capture the power of the mind beyond the given conditions of our consciousness. One seeks to acquire a knowledge of the powers of the body in order to discover, in a parallel fashion, the powers of the mind that elude consciousness, and thus to be able to compare the powers. In short, the model of the body, according to Spinoza, does not imply any devaluation of thought in relation to extension, but much more importantly, a devaluation of consciousness in relation to thought, a discovery of the unconscious, of an unconscious of thought, just as profound as an unknown of the body. Ibid. Worth reading by yourself as well. This parallelism is also crucial to how Spinoza works around Descartes, the earlier significant rationalist of the period, and his implied mind-body dualism. What I have called earlier the constructivist hypothesis begins with the taking on of a minimal degree of responsibility to the other, a willingness to welcome and respond to what is put forth in a dialogue, creating the possibility of and conditions for continuity or any further development. This is indicated in the name of the work in question, ethics as opposed to a morality. This privileging of an ethics as opposed to a morality, of thought against mere consciousness, is the path Spinoza takes in his effort to construe an understanding of emotive affectations, such as joy or sadness, in terms of the encounter between bodies. The composition or decomposition which these bodies may enter into is what produces the affectations of joy or sadness. We experience joy when a body enters into composition with ours, and sadness when a body or an idea threatens our own coherence. Or, as Deleuze would put it, the object which agrees with us would help us form superior totalities, including us, the object, and ourselves. Principally, these are the elements of Spinoza's work which Deleuze draws upon in the construction of his rhizomatic hypothesis. What constitutes a philosophical escape from history into the terrain of geography? The historical method, so long enshrined in the legacy of the humanities, is temporarily moved away from, and a form of thought more nomadic in its sensibilities arises. An exploratory hypothesis which is not bound to a tradition, thought, or situation, but seeks to move through these, entering into composition and decompositions along the way, extending and retracting and constructing in a multiplicity of directions. A nutritive and vitalistic mode of thinking, with the word rhizome naming the amoebic and vegetative aspects immanent to it. A constant restless intrusion between the molar and the minor. For Deleuze and Guattari, becoming minoritarian is here an ethical action. Minor and becoming minor here do not refer to minority groups, which are yet defined by identities and are hence molar configurations. Belonging to the state machine. Deleuze and Guattari's central example here is Kafka, who finds himself at home neither among the Prague Jews nor the dominant Austria-Hungarian power structure. For him, a people is missing, and his literature sets out to summon that people. This constitutes a brief exposition of the use value of some of Spinoza's conceptual production, as well as developments further drawn on by Deleuze in Spinoza, Practical Philosophy. Any work in the field of Spinoza scholarship needs to contend with the unique form of his book, Ethics, laid out as a series of propositions expounding each other in a geometric sequence, rising from definitions to explanations. Here, however, I would like to reflect a moment on Deleuze's work, which too takes a form rather interesting. The fourth chapter, which is also the largest, is presented in the form of a dictionary, an explication of the words and terms used by Spinoza in a coherent and systematic manner listed alphabetically. One may wonder as to why such an explication is dealt into in such a work, and it is here that the value of such an exposition may be appreciated. In Spinoza's original treatise, the axiomatic delivery of its thesis in that geometric form is transcribed, or perhaps translated, into the form of an enunciatory dictionary. This transcribing in ways extends the brief geometric and axiomatic extensions, effectively enfleshing it with the relations that these terms are constitutive of. The relation between extension and thought, for example. This exploration of the terrain between and its exploration of the multiplicity of relations immanent to it is what constitutes the methodological proficiency of Deleuze's thought. I wanted to share this with you, a small paper that I had put together a long time ago in college. Thank you. Bye-bye.